Welcome to The Code. Construction, design and engineering. This is India's #1 construction podcast.
Guys, welcome. And I've been sort of expecting you guys and hoping that you guys show up. And finally you are here because I wanted to talk to you guys about heritage architecture and what restoration is and how you guys go about it and your ideas behind that, because I wanted to share it with my audience. But before we begin, quickly, would you like to introduce yourselves one by one?
We'll
Hinna
start
first?
we'll start with ma'am.
Ma'am first. Ma'am first.
So my name is Aishwarya Tipnis.
Yeah.
I'm trained as a heritage architect. I've been working in the industry for 20 years. Dirtied my hands with some really interesting buildings, and I think the learning is still on.
Awesome.
I'm Devi Singh. I too trained as an architect, but now I think there's so much more that we can do which is related with architecture, which helps us kind of get the idea out. So along with Aishwarya, we have this social innovation initiative that's called Jugaadpolis. And through our various projects, that's what we do. We get the word across, so we do a lot of interactions and working with
Who came up with the
universities.
name? I love the name, Jugaadpolis.
Well, it was something that was at the back of our mind for a long time, because we've studied cities, we work with urban heritage, so to say. I mean, our work is largely connected with cities.
Yeah.
And we find that our cities are cities of Jugaad, so therefore Jugaadpolis.
Oh.
So,
But I'll give her credit for that, because she had been, we'd been doing this some work related to. Actually, no, I wasn't there then, really part of that project. But it was let's be honest about it, right?
Yeah.
So Aishwarya was kind of working at that time on a few projects and things, and there's this other book that she's written, of course, related to that. So there was this project that she had done, and then she ended up meeting a few other scholars, researchers, etc. In Amsterdam. You met them in Amsterdam, right? And when they saw the project and they heard it, they saw the presentation of what the project was, etc. And they said, do you know, young lady, this is what you do? And she was like, really? They're like, yeah, but this project encompasses all of those fundamentals or principles of sustainability or whatever. And then they invited her to come on board with them to do this book together. And when we did that book, that's when the word Jugaad got associated with us. Because that's where Aishwarya kind of put forward that, Jugaad is also a principle of sustainability, of sustainable practice, so as to say. So that's how Jugaad came. And then we realized that everything around us was actually purely Jugaad, and we were just living in cities of Jugaad, right? So we were trying to, and we had been doing workshops, outreach projects, capacity building or whatever else, and seminars, conferences, trying to get the word across separately at that time through our architectural practices or whatever else, get invited here and there as people to do things like that. And then it just so happened that that's when it happened, with other people kind of validating what you're doing, and kind of agreeing with your thought.
see, I think sometimes what happens is, when you're so focused on doing things, you're just doing things, but you're not pausing and reflecting and looking at what is the impact of what you do. And I think that was the point in time when I was so busy in just, doing things, going from delivery to delivery, one project to the other, that I had never paused and reflected on the thread of my work. And it's only when I met these two gentlemen who were philosophers and who had written this entire theory in 2010, where they talked about what is the future of architecture, world, whatever.
Wow.
And it said that they have this theory, it's called sustainability, and they say that the future is in collaboration, the future is in doing things together, the future is in sharing knowledge.
Yeah.
And that was something that was core to what we had been doing since then, since before they coined the theory, as to say. So when they met me and they found this thread in my work is when I realized that actually we need to really reflect and see, why do we do what we do? Because we didn't do something because there was a theory. We did it because we believed in it. We did it because there was something within us that was guiding us to go into this direction.
Yeah.
And that's why we started Jugaad, because we felt that we have something of value, and that value needs to reach out to more people, whether they are young architects, whether they are kids, whether they are general people, whether they are owners of heritage properties, etc. Because a lot of knowledge just gets caged in books and in expert conferences, and while all the experts know all the answers, but the people who are responsible for this heritage have no idea, whether they are city authorities, whether they know that this is heritage, but they don't understand what that means or what is the impact of that on their lives. And that's what Jugaad sets out to. It tries to demystify heritage in simple terms for regular people.
Okay.
Because heritage belongs to everybody.
Okay. What is heritage architecture?
So, if you look at architecture as such, I mean, heritage is a very integral part of it, right? So, if you are looking at cities and there are buildings that are really old, anything you do with those buildings is heritage architecture. So, whether you are restoring them, retrofitting them, adding new extensions to them, changing things in them, all of that is heritage architecture. So when you're intervening in a heritage context, it's heritage architecture. A lot of people call it different things. So some people call it renovation, some people call it adaptive reuse, some people call it retrofitting. So essentially heritage architecture is when you intervene in a heritage setting, which could be a city, it could be a street, it could be a campus, it could be a building.
Yeah, and I think the main aspect is that people kind of associate heritage architecture with monuments or things of that age.
Yeah.
But now we're very happy that it's happening, that the fraternity is recognizing it also, the entire idea of what is modern heritage, right? Something which is like, we all are living in a city that the entire city is now modern heritage. It doesn't have to be a monument or something. I think DDA flats are modern heritage, right?
I think it's also about cities. Not every building is a heritage building, right? But when you walk around a street, there's a certain feeling, right? So you go, let's say, for example, you go into Purani Delhi. You're walking into some gali kucha. Not every building is protected as a heritage haveli, right?
Yeah.
But one haveli after the haveli adds character to that street. We all get upset, including the residents, jab one haveli falls down and some builder comes and makes a monstrous building over there.
Yeah.
And then everyone is complaining ki, it's very crowded, we have no light is being blocked, this, that and the other. So heritage impacts everybody's lives.
Yeah. It's happening everywhere.
And it's not about
Just
protecting a building and putting it on a list and saying, ye heritage hai. The point is, how can heritage work towards making the lives of the people better?
Okay. One of the biggest deterrents to that I see as a capitalist is the money aspect, right? Because the land prices, they're basically just spiraling up like anything, right? So Delhi property prices, about it. Anywhere across Delhi, there's no cheap land as such. The idea of vertical expansion is something that comes naturally to anybody. And the next generation, which needs to be settled into that settlement or into that building or that apartment, renovation or rebuilding seems like a very natural thing to do. And like you said, most people don't know what heritage is, right? How should I be more conscious of the heritage in my area? For example, I come from this small town in South Delhi, which is Mehrauli, right? It has a lot of old, maybe more than 200-year-old buildings, especially around the Qutub area. There's one of the biggest dargahs in Delhi is in Mehrauli. There's a Bavli of water which is there, which is being studied by architectural students, and they have architectural tours in Mehrauli. And there are major buildings, boundaries have been made which are old boundaries. Nothing has been preserved. उसके ऊपर वो लोहे की रेलिंग लग गई है, सब जगह जाल लग गए हैं. It's just sort of becoming something that used to be rather than something that can still exist for the longest time period, right? I don't think it can happen at just my level or at an individualistic 5 people level as well. There's a community around it. I don't know how to invoke that emotion within that community saying, okay, let's preserve this or let's try to restore it and let's keep it like it is for the next generation. I think it's a tough job that you guys have at hand. How do you guys go around it? Like, do you lose your cool? Do you have BP issues? What's going on? Diabetes? It's not easy. Like,
see, I think anything of value is never easy.
Yeah.
Because when it comes easy, it's not worth it. Because and we've also felt that it's not important about what we think. It's important what the custodians of that heritage think.
Okay.
Right? I can come as an expert and say, this is really good, you have to do this. But the people who own it, the people whose everyday life that particular structure or open space or chalk or whatever is impacting, if they don't feed it, no matter how many experts come, no matter what the government does, it's going to go back to how it was.
Yeah.
So unless there is a buy-in at the ground level, like something doesn't even have to be heritage. Like if you look at a residential colony, for example, when the RWA comes together and say we will maintain all the green parks and we will make sure it is clean and we will make sure that there is no garbage and there is place for children to play, communities can come together. And sometimes it's not about making it into this big thing, but it's about doing simple things at the right time. And if communities feel empowered to do it on their own, that is the most sustainable way forward. Because you can't be flying in, fly-by-night experts to come and help people, because people know how to help themselves.
yeah.
See, and people don't look at it that way, and that's something that every time we do meet a community and community is not just about the people that live there, it's also people that might be associated with it. And if you're looking at a school precinct or somewhere else, or shopkeepers, they're also part of the community.
Yeah.
And what mostly experts forget, or even the government forgets, is सत्ता बदलती है, लोग चले जाते हैं 4-5 साल में, है ना? People go away. And it happens with experts also. You come do this today, tomorrow you'll go do another project. But the people stay. The community stays. The community doesn't go away. I mean, you look at where we are sitting right now. I'm sure people are here for hundreds of years, maybe more. Like shops have changed or maybe something like that. Yeah. But the basic root, the basic essence of the place remains. And if you can, as Aishwarya rightly said, empower those people to do something and also to have like some rights to do something. It's not just about the will. The will, I would say, still it's difficult. It's difficult to evoke that they want to do it.
Yeah.
But they reach that point when, but how?
So I think in my 2-decade career, I think what I have learned is that the role of an architect is not just of a designer. In fact, when we are trying to do projects that impact communities, you are the facilitator. You will bring different kinds of people together, which means you will get a lot of brickbats, you will get a lot of diverse opinions. A community, I always say this, a community is like a joint family. If one is looking this side, the other will look that side. It's impossible that if you are doing genuine work, that everybody will be on the same page easily. If everyone is saying, हाँ हमने सबने sign कर दिया, then either it's a coerced effect or it's like they haven't really even understood what you are saying.
Something unnatural,
So the point is that as professionals, it's really, a lot of communities are not aware of what they are capable of, what their potential is, or what they can do. But they can do a lot. And I think it's actually about triggering them, and then you see the kind of effect that it has, and they come together and they find their own ways, they find funding, they do whatever there needs to be done. The minute they understand that this is something that is good for them, and you don't teach that to them, you let them realize it. And that's why it's not about what you think. It's about helping them achieve their dream. And that's what is really difficult, because often architects are looked at as personality driven people, that where it is one person's vision that is forced down people's throats. But in creating community led, social led projects, the architect is just a facilitator. Because I think the point is, we like to be invisible, in the sense that once we've done the work and things start happening on their own, and the minute they feel they don't need us is when we've hit a successful project.
It's
The
a
minute
sad feeling also, but
when they feel that अब इनकी क्या जरूरत है, you know, ये तो हम खुद ही कर लेंगे.
Right.
That is the point, you know, you have empowered them.
but then that's the moment, of course, because it's a bittersweet kind
Yeah.
of situation. But that's the moment we remind ourselves that, but that's what we were going to do,
That's
right?
why
We were
have to
empowering
move.
them.
That
like
is our
we
cue
were-
to move on to something
And
else.
that's when we decide that, okay, now, you know, our work here is done, we need to move on. So it's really difficult to keep doing that over and over again. And we get a lot of hate for it, because now when the people can do it on their own, why would they need people like us?
Right.
So the rest of the people around us are like, why are you empowering them so much that now they don't need people like us?
But that's
that's
the
the
purpose.
point.
That's the purpose
I
fulfilled,
think
right?
that's the thing. There is so much work to do, and there are so many communities, particularly in our cities, in our towns, and I think we need many more people like us, and that's what we try to do at Jugaad is create future leaders, is inspiring other young people to be those leaders for their own communities. It's not about us going to Jhansi and doing something. It is about empowering an architect in Jhansi to do something for their town.
This sounds very much on the lines with activism and architecture as a blend together.
Yeah, but that's what we said. It's a social innovation initiative.
Jugaad. Awesome. That's not a it's a unique perspective on things as well, because my blood boiled when my nani's house, which was brilliant. It was so amazing. There was no AC in the house. कभी गर्मी नहीं लगी हमें घर में. It had these long galleries opening up, and there were no closed doors to say. लोहे वाली ग्रिल वाले दरवाजे थे और हर जगह से हवा क्रॉस करती थी. कभी गर्मी में गर्मी नहीं लगी हमें, कभी सर्दी में ठंड नहीं लगी हमें. It was amazing. The sunlight was natural. It was made beautifully, but the requirement of time and the family growing, they broke it all down and they made it into that multi-level thing. I still remember each switch from growing up in my nani's house, but had it just been, I don't know, if we could have just restored it in that way and just created maybe more space around it somehow, it would have been a thing to treasure, because there would have been no other house like that in that community. Everything looks exactly the same. Everything has glass in it. Everything has those floor systems in it. There's no parking anywhere. But चलिए, requirement बढ़ती जाती है तो शायद change होता रहता है. I want to know why restoration especially is such a big thing, and compared to new builders, of course. And why do you guys profess and help people restore in the built space?
See, I think restoration is not just of the material fabric. By that I mean that it's not that we're just restoring brick, mortar,
Exactly.
say ceiling, plaster. What we're restoring is something intangible as well, like your family's pride, your identity, your legacy, and that's why it is so important, because it's not just about creating space and having a modern kitchen or having a modern bathroom. Of course, you can have that even in a heritage home. So one of the first projects I did was a Haveli in Old Delhi, way back in 2010, when the first heritage listing had come into Delhi. And the family at the time didn't really understand why their house was listed as heritage, because they said heritage is like Lal Killa. Why is our house heritage? We want to live comfortably. And at that point of time, it was like, if Old Delhi was not fit enough for leading, so you sell your Haveli to some go down, or you go buy a flat in Vaishali, Ghaziabad or something, because that is the kind of money you will get. So when this family approached me and they said that, we have this old house and we have 3 sons and, we want to do something about it, we need to get them married, etc., etc. Typical.
Challenges of family life, let's say.
So I think, I've written a book about it and I'll send that to you, because
Please.
I don't want to spoil all the stories. But the point was that it took a lot of energy to explain to them that actually, if they go the restoration way, it will really enhance their place in their own community, in their own society, and it will restore back the pride of the family, that, because it was built by their great grandfather, who was a cloth merchant, who was, an important trader in Old Delhi at the time,
a story,
etc. And I was a really young architect. I didn't know the right answer either, right? We were struggling, we were finding the answers. And it took us 8 years to do this restoration project. And the project was done with them living in the house. And a lot of lessons that we learned were through this project. And this is the project that the Dutch people said was in the most sustainist way ever. And they wrote a book about it, which is the book I'll share with you. But the point I'm trying to make is that restoration is important for 2 reasons. Of course, it is always cost effective if you design it properly, where you don't replace everything. So the real conservation means if you have 10, let's say, timber trusses, और उसमें से एक खराब है तो आप एक को रिप्लेस करोगे, आप होलसेल रिप्लेसमेंट नहीं करोगे सबकी, बिकॉज द एंटिक्विटी इज इन व्हाट एग्जिस्ट्स.
बट मेरा ठेकेदार तो नहीं मानता.
So that is replacement, that is not conservation, right? Restoration means doing things with a lot of love, doing things with a lot of patience, and doing only what is necessary. So when you do only what is necessary, obviously the cost is going to be much less compared to bringing it down and pulling it.
And
it's basically like being conscious about what you're doing.
And cost on all levels. It's not just about the material. I mean, like, it's not just how much it will cost you money-wise. It will cost the environment lesser, right? You're producing lesser.
Demolition is one of the biggest causes that we have so much air pollution in Delhi, because left, right, and center buildings are being demolished.
But you guys are catering to a fixed mindset, isn't it? Like, especially when it comes to talking about all these ideas to a family, which is like, okay, boss, मेरे को तो अब 3 floor चाहिए ही चाहिए, बच्चे.
But आप 3 floor बना सकते हो ना अपने पुराने घर के भी. It's called adaptive reuse.
Yeah, but
people do it world over,
they
right?
do it.
People do it world over. I mean, okay, so I was.
What is the biggest deterrent you think people have in their minds? कि अगर if at all any, now especially. अब तो.
See, I think the first thing is societal pressure कि लोग क्या कहेंगे. ठीक है कि they think
many dreams have been shattered.
No, they think
नया नहीं
लोग
होगा.
सोचेंगे कि इनके पास पैसे नहीं है, इसीलिए they are not, getting a swanky house. So I think what we learned in the Old Delhi project was to say that पैसे है इसीलिए they can restore an old house, because नया तो सबके पास है.
Right.
So it's about twisting the narrative. It's about
and it's case
telling
specific.
the story in a different way. So I think the point is, people are really bothered by what other people think.
Okay.
And they're also bothered by what is considered to be modern, what is considered to be
That
trendy.
is a very inherent fiber of our Indian being, by the way. कुछ तो लोग
It
कहेंगे
really
वाला.
depends. It is actually case. Somebody says कि हम तो अगर it's really, as Aishwarya said, it's about twisting the narrative correctly. Sometimes you have to put it across as ये तो शौक क्या है ना. शौक वाली चीजें तो तभी करते हैं जब आपके पास
पैसे होते हैं.
तो शौक क्या है, हम तो शौक क्या अपना घर वो कर रहे हैं, हम नहीं जा सकते, like it's like that. So either it's like that, or you have to turn it around and say that this is the latest technology. Then you have to convince them for an idea, like adaptive reuse is an old idea, it's hundreds and hundreds of years old, but you have to convince them ये नई चीज है.
हो रहा है तो आप भी कर लो.
तो हम तो पुराने घर को नया बनाएंगे जैसे बाहर होता है ना वैसे. Like Europe, we will do it. So now you're suddenly European and you can do adaptive reuse in your house. So it's really like working with society and community, and it starts from inside that house, that one house, and it goes out finally into the community, and like that you convince one person.
It sort of also breaks my heart that you have to sell being unique and being that uniqueness to that entire project in that way. You know what I mean?
So that's why we started Jugadopolis to educate and spread awareness about how our way of life is actually the sustainable way forward.
Yeah.
So that's what we do through our workshops, symposiums, seminars, and other projects.
We really encourage people. We encourage all our clients. Any project that we've done, we tell them please have outreach events in your house, and nobody wants to call somebody to a site. They're like, वो MCD को complain कर देंगे, वो ये कर देंगे, like that. Yeah. But we're like, we are not doing anything illegal. We are doing everything which is by the book, and we can do it. But the only way everybody else will be convinced is if you call them home. So recently we have another project in Old Delhi, which that's also an adaptive reuse project. And then we told him that call the community. So we've been doing little things there with them also, and they're also really in touch. Now people around are seeing the value of converting that into a cultural center or having these kind of meetings there. So we've had we met the MCD there, we've met even the local community, done things about sanitation and keeping things clean. How is it that we just did this frontage? How can it kind of be imbibed by the people around? So you have to You have to have more people believing in that school of thought.
I think the point is that money is not an issue in India. You know, a lot of people think that
Especially
they are not. A lot of people think that heritage is not getting preserved because there are no funds. That's not true.
Yeah.
There is a lot of money in India, right? But the point is that sometimes people who are owners of this heritage can find money in different ways. They can find the craftsmen also. We're not in a society where you don't find heritage crafts and you don't find people to do these kind of things. What people really need from people like us is moral support. What people really need is somebody to believe in their vision.
This is a good idea.
Yeah. And to validate it. Everyone is looking for validation. And we have realized in our time that if we can offer moral support, advice, guidance, and hand-holding, projects get done. And that's why when we started the Restoration Toolbox, it's also been a kind of journey. We started with teaching students, and through students we created free resources. Through free resources, we started handing out those resources to other people through a digital medium. We created open source platform that could do multiple things, etc.
Speaking of, I read this book for you guys, right? The Restoration Toolbox, right? But before I actually jump to what it is, you guys spoke about circularity in a very big way within this book, because that's, for me, it seemed like the entire linchpin where the entire framework is based on. I want you guys to speak about circularity a little bit and explain what it is so that people can get a better idea or the picture behind the whole idea. Yeah?
No, ma'am, you start.
She'll jump in.
I'll jump in. I'll find my spot. Don't worry.
I think so far, I'll keep it in the really most simple fashion. When we consume from the planet and we keep taking, it's a very linear mindset. We take and we waste, we take and we waste. And that leads to a lot of environmental degradation. We have stuff that is just dumped, and that is causing us catastrophic issues. Circularity, the idea of circularity is that what we take from the planet, we put back. So everything is moving in a circle. So it is not a linear, but it's a circular path. That is what circularity actually means. So circularity is a concept that has been used for, carbon coming in, carbon going out. It's been used for material coming in, material going out, resources coming in, resources going out, like that. So when we apply the concept to buildings, there is a lot of resource that has gone into building a building. So whether it is brick, stone, water, timber, whatever, particularly old buildings, there is very, well-seasoned wood. There is, 200-year-old cast iron. There is a lot of material that has already gone into the building. So the idea of circularity is that suppose you are, for some reason, needing to demolish that building, then the building can be broken down into these components and they can be given a new lease of life in some other project or in some other building. So the material doesn't go to the wasteland, but it continues into the new journey. So that's how circularity and the built environment are connected in our head. So what happens is we are very cognizant of the fact that we are not going to be able to save every building on this planet. We are also cognizant of the fact that if there is a street and there are 10 buildings, 2 will be protected as heritage and 8 will go. So what happens to all the energy, the embodied carbon and the material that has gone into building those buildings? And can that be taken back and put into another building to reduce the carbon footprint? That's what circularity is.
That whole idea is very new to India in any case.
It is, but
actually it's not, because I think if you look at old
the concept of it
is very, very old.
That's exactly what
and that is how जुगाड़ comes in. कि आप यहाँ से पुरानी चीज ये ले लो, वहाँ से वो ले लो, mix कर लो, बना लो. That is circularity.
That is circularity. And unfortunately, we have this feeling in society कि नया अच्छा होता है. अब देखो, अब चाहे जाके आप पुराना लो, because they'll be like किसी का कचरा उठा के ले आए, तुम घर पे कर क्या रहे हो? कबाड़ी हो?
That mindset is there.
आप कबाड़ी हो? उसके लिए पुरानी थी, हमारे लिए तो नहीं है ना. चीज अच्छी खासी थी, उस बेचारे को घर तोड़ना पड़ा, उसने सब कुछ निकाल दिया वहां से.
यूरोप उसको बोलेगा vintage, antique,
recycle, so there is this entire practice which is called reuse architecture. So you basically reuse a building. So adaptive reuse is when you're like doing stuff like that, but what they call reuse architecture, at least in most of Western Europe. I mean, that's where I first heard it when I was doing my masters in Switzerland. That they used to say there's this thing called reuse architecture. So we went and we saw what it was. And essentially what it is, that there were pieces, literally pieces, components, bones, skeleton, structure, whatever else, of old buildings that they would put into newer buildings and then make them. Just say, you won't need to have beams, right? You would put an I section.
Yeah.
You are from the industry, you understand this perfectly. Train का track और I section में कितना फर्क है?
नहीं होता. Durability का होता है बस.
तो जब tram हटी, you know, when the tram tracks got removed and there was this tram shipyard tha, so they had the depot and this thing. So when they moved all the tracks also, which used to be used for the ships to be this thing, they used those to make the beams in the
interesting
in the structure.
You know,
it can be done, and it's being done here also. So दरवाजे खिड़कियां मतलब पुराने घरों में
मतलब आप जोधपुर जाओ, you have like warehouses and warehouses full of Havelis का components from Rajasthan and Gujarat out for export. दरवाजे, खिड़की, bracket, everything is going abroad. But
हम नहीं use कर रहे.
See, traditional.
But we are living in a world of mass production, are we not? Like we have
everything from our clothes to the food we consume, everything, even the vegetables we eat. Nothing is no longer क्योंकि आपको वरना 24/7 and 365 days watermelon नहीं मिलता. Let's be honest, right? Like you will not get it. कभी होता था season आया भी अच्छा होगा. कोई season नहीं होता. You get everything through the year.
Exactly.
But leaving all of that aside, you know, when you're looking at a basic house today, sitting here, you can get a full wooden cabin house which would be in the forest of Bali. You can get it in India in a container. Because traditional detailing and traditional woodwork was made that way, that they would use the big components and it would just be a slot in this thing, like a jigsaw puzzle, and you could fit it all together. So they just make it, they disassemble it, they put the pieces together like an IKEA box, and it comes to you and you can make the house. Actually, when you look at old wood in old homes, whether it is in South India or all the way in Kashmir or wherever else, it is still that. You have these components that can be used anywhere. So we would, we'd worked on this fancy project here in Chhatarpur, where they had gotten 26 columns from some old temple complex that was getting redone, supposedly redone. So sare uske columns hata diye the, the huge wooden columns, which came trawler mein baith kar, you know, and they got reused. So you can do it. And looking at this thought, which is again sustainabilism, the practice of sustainabilism, which is again looking at, you know, circular economy. We met this gentleman. So it's not that it is only with the experts, these thoughts. There are these lone warriors, right? Lone warriors, and who we need to get their voice out. So there's this gentleman, he's taken pieces from 15 to 20
dismembered
houses. Over the past 25-30 years, he's been collecting stuff. So there's like, anytime he hears that there is, and he's made friends with the kabadi. So when he goes for demolition, it is buying the stuff. He goes, before you break things down, I will come. Yeah, so he's been collecting things and now he's made his workshop. He's a weaver based out of Srinagar.
He's there in our movie.
Yeah, he's there in the film as well. One of the films that we made with the project. And he's taken these pieces and he's made this house. So ground floor ki khidkiyan kahin aur ki hai, darwaze kahin aur ki hai. Even the false ceiling. So, you know, you go through, it's almost like, and that is actually making heritage. It's making new heritage with old heritage. So tomorrow somebody will come back and they'll still see the art and craft and craftsmanship when they'll come to his house. Because just ghar ke wo column the, wo ghar toot chuka hai.
Yeah.
Right? The columns are 230 years old. That house is gone because somebody's built it and, you know, broken it down and some builders built it there. But in his house, it is there. So you walk through his house and in one room, you'll say, oh, this Khatamban ceiling is 130 years old. This one is 260 years old. This one is 80 years old. This one I had in attic for 35 years. I'm trying to put it together to put it here. Wow. And it's nice. Because हर एक खिड़की, हर एक दरवाजा, उसके लिए तो नया है.
What story, na?
And it's beautiful.
And also the whole point of there being inherent aesthetic, you know, what will go with what, how to put it. It's not necessarily, I mean, that's what we are trying to say, that sometimes you just have to be sensitive and people can figure it out on their own. No, there was no architect in this gentleman. He's done it on his own.
He just
but
called
it's an aesthetically pleasing house.
Yeah.
He called the कारीगर्स and he said कि मैं तो just got all the खिड़कियाँ दरवाजे and they said कि पता है ये ना छोटी खिड़की है तो हम ऐसा करेंगे ये वाली उधर लगाएंगे ये वाली. He's like, so his labor, he's a weaver, right? He has aesthetic sensibilities. Yes, he can see balance and all that. But it is like it was the local labor. They only told me कि ये वाले कॉलम इधर लगाते हैं, ये वाले उधर लगाते हैं, ये इसको support कर देगा, ये वहाँ पे support कर देगा.
What is the biggest challenge to circularity in your opinion, especially in the build space?
Mindset.
That's it?
Societal mindset.
Would you say lack of awareness?
I think
Most
we
people
don't have
know
the
this.
vocabulary to touch the masses at the moment. We have a vocabulary where we are speaking to the learned and the converted already, right? So if we are talking in our fraternity of architects, construction people, designers, whatever, they already know. So when you explain to them, and today there's a trend of revival, there's a trend of handcrafted, there's a trend. So all the converted are anyway.
Trend is bigger than any sort of other
Everybody
principle.
is converted at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay? But the point is that the person who's breaking their house, he doesn't think it's aspirational. So there is one person who bought the 15 houses, but there are 15 people who broke those houses.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think it's about we still haven't figured out what is the language or what is the lexicon that we need to have to speak to the masses. Because learned people know everything. But if we don't speak to the people who are actually, the action takers in this, then how can circularity become a popular way of life?
And that's why we always say that, these projects start at the grassroots. It doesn't matter. Of course, you eventually need the top, or you eventually need the government to give you a policy or give you some kind of incentives, etc., whatever else. But even if they do exist, there's nobody there asking for that. So until unless you can make these people believe that this is what they want and this is the right they should have, or this is the kind of ideology which is worth believing in, it's really difficult.
And I think it's like everybody knows. See, everyone who is grounded knows. Like, for example, let's talk about a simple example, like a sari. Okay, every single person knows that a sari is the most sustainable fashion garment, right? Your great grandmother also knew. And there are heirloom pieces that are passed on to in
Generation
every
to
family,
generation,
generation to generation, well taken care of. And everybody knows that if there is a particular function, then you will wear it. Everybody knows that sizes change. Everybody knows that as you will age, things will change, but the sari will accommodate you, right? But in the last 30 years, it was looked at regressive. It was looked at, not the modern woman's garment. And so it got shunned and
narratives
thrown away
got
and
changed,
all of that. And, only poor women would wear it. Maiyo ke kapde the, etc. Fancy women don't
The
do
word
it.
is Benji also.
Exactly.
Western wear क्यों नहीं पहन सकते?
Yeah.
And I think now, a few years back, when there are new social media influencers who are starting things like 100 sari packs, is then when it is becoming popular with the new generation. And then suddenly they want masis and chachis and padosi aunties to give them saris because they need to post on social media. So the point is, it's not about the method. It is about what it is achieving and the impact of it. The impact is today you go to a party, there will be 2 women still wearing the sari, which means that we need to change the language. We need to change the way we are talking to this generation. Because value is something that everybody understands. And then one person starts doing it, 4 aur ko samajh mein aata hai ki haan, this is something even I can do.
One of the most amazing ways that I've sort of come across is invoking emotion. And that emotion, especially with preserving or let's say restoring heritage, can come with nostalgia. Because everybody has that. I had that. I told you a story right before we started recording about how I wanted a terrazzo flooring because I grew up in a house with a white cement wala terrazzo floor. But if you can actually appeal to their nostalgia and that emotion, I think it will work. That's part of the reason why all of us are still eating that hot chocolate fudge from Nirvana's. Growing up, it was a thing, right? And I think that's it. It's still good. It'll always be good till the time it's being sold. So maybe that is one language or that narrative that can be drawn around that nostalgia and emotion.
But it's also, it changes with the generation. Like your son may not think that...
For him, it is this.
Like you're saying, evoking emotion. India is a very complex country. right? And so are our social practices. That's why we also say that we are a social initiative. Because you have to somewhere find an innovative way to break society. And society is not just about economy, right? There are social practices, cultural practices, religious
Sadly,
practices.
the bigger viewpoint is economy only. But
Religious practices. So we've discussed the aspect of उनको capitalistic mindset से नहीं दिखता कि पैसे है नहीं है, rich, poor, good, bad, whatever. Then you have societal pressure कि everybody in society is doing this and all, which is also related again to money. Then you have cultural practices. कि यहाँ नहीं बैठते वहाँ नहीं अब तो ज़माना बदल गया. Earlier there were joint families, so you used to have in every house, no matter how free and how open your family was, you used to have these cultural practices. This was the women's section of the house, that was the man's section of the private, this thing, etc. There was a courtyard. The courtyard worked in a certain way and whatever else, right? Now we all live in flats, but the flats also we divide like that. There is that one door in the middle which divides the bahar ka drawing room from the andar ka drawing room. In all joint families also there is that, or everybody has a floor. Then the women can be free on the other floors, or the youngsters go to the terrace where you have when you have that huge family house where you have 2-3 brothers and their kids living, which is all good. So when we talk about circularity and we try to push it, then comes the biggest part about a society and culture, which is अंधविश्वास. मतलब हमारे यहाँ पे किसी की पुरानी साड़ी नहीं पहनते ना, वो कहते हैं कि आप wear anything, don't wear that person's wedding. हाँ, that wear that, no, not
the
Uttaran.
word is Uttaran.
Uttaran is still okay. Uttaran is okay. आप अपने father की, mother की, ये सब आप पहन सकते हो. बड़े भाई की, बुआ के कपड़े तो सारी लड़कियों ने पहने.
हाँ, बड़े भाई के कपड़े छोटे भाई ने.
जिनकी बुआएं हैं, मतलब it's a joke, right? When something doesn't fit, we have a joke with our friends. क्या हो गया? बुआ के कुर्ता पहन के आए. It's a joke. It used to be in college also.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's a superstition. Like they will not let you wear a wedding sari from someone, or a piece of jewelry. It's like so superstitious. Their wedding never did well. Their family was doomed. Just didn't say they bought this sari or bought this car or whatever else, right? So the biggest problem in Indian society, and it's across religions. It's not a thing about it's across religions.
It's not a religious thing.
That they have this thing about that this thing is jinxed, or there is something about it.
Yeah.
So when you try to convince certain people, again from a certain strata of society, because you need to be able to afford to buy even pieces of somebody's house, they say a person who lived in this house with this became so bankrupt he had to break down his house and he's selling pieces, and you want me to bring that luck into my house? What do you do with that? And that's where again community engagement, changing the mindset. So it's like even the process is circular.
Sometimes I understand that side also, because your own home is like a very big emotion for you, right? It's a very big thing for you. It's like an achievement sort of thing.
And अगर आपने बोला कि ये सब बकवास होता है, this is something I don't believe, और फिर आपके साथ कुछ हो गया, सबने कहा. Then it is a constant battle, because what happens is that we get the clan to agree, right? We get them to agree, and they say, okay, fine, let's do this. So उसमें भी पूरा they are broken up, and they're like, there'll be still two people, let's say Shadi, maybe have the Bua Fufas sitting in the corner. So in this entire wedding, we call it a wedding only. Every time we do a project, we say this is like one giant wedding. Somebody will crib, somebody will complain, किसी को पानी नहीं पहुंचेगा, किसी ने समोसे नहीं खाए. It'll be like that. It's okay. So the Fufaji will be standing in the corner, not a literal Fufaji, but in that scenario. And then by chance, भागते भागते किसी से थाली गिर जाएगी, और जिस दिन वो थाली गिरी फिर वो शुरू हो जाएंगे. इन्हीं को तुम लाई, then they start, आप ही रिश्ता लेके आए थे पंडित जी, लड़की गलत. So then we are like, हमें तो बुरा बनना ही है, it doesn't matter, so we might as well do it. But the point is to keep believing, and the point is to keep pushing it, because sooner or later
in such a society, how do you build policy framework then? Because अब यूरोप पॉलिसी फ्रेमवर्क तो क्लियर है, बिकॉज देयर कल्चर इज टू प्रिजर्व एंड रिस्टोर. बिकॉज लाइक आई वाज टॉकिंग राइट अबाउट पेरिस. So there is this one building which they call the middle finger of Paris, because it's the ugliest thing in the center of Paris. And after that one tower, they did not allow any high-rise building within the limits of the city. And everything which is high-rise or new built is outside city limits. So they try to preserve everything about Paris. And part of the reason why we still want to visit European countries is because it sort of feels European. It sort of still gives you that vibe when you go to those cobbled streets, and you enjoy that. And time and again, a lot of friends have told me that US से better मुझे यार Europe लगता है जाना. It's because that culture is still more or less intact. People evolve, of course, but the buildings are there. The sites are similar. What's the policy framework difference between Europe and India today? And do you see any evolution happening in the policies in the future? या क्या लड़ाई चल रही है? Would there be something?
The problem Problem bolo, mindset bolo. I think a lot of times what happens is when we go as visitors, we see something from the surface. So for example, you will have a lot of conferences where people will say, London ko dekho, they have preserved the heritage so well, ये वो हमें भी करना चाहिए. उनके heritage precinct है, उनकी Regent Street पे कोई new building नहीं बना सकता, etc. etc. And we try to copy those bylaws into our system. But the point is वहाँ पे भी उतनी ही problem है जितनी हमारे, वहाँ पे भी उतने ही गंदे डेवलपर हैं जितने हमारे हैं. वहाँ पे भी हेरिटेज के लिए रोज लड़ाइयाँ हो रही हैं कि इसको प्रिजर्व करें या ना करें.
Real estate is real estate everywhere.
Everywhere. So the point is, I think what we need is not copy pasting policies, but building policies that are relevant to us and our context.
Right.
Those very Europeans जिनके स्ट्रीट हम देखने जाते हैं और फिर हम देखते हैं कि कॉबल स्ट्रीट वहाँ है तो सारे स्मार्ट सिटी पे कॉबल स्टोन लगा दो क्योंकि कॉबल स्टोन से हेरिटेज लुक आती है ना.
कम से कम कॉबल स्टोन ठीक तो करो.
But the point is that when they come to India, they love Jodhpur and Jaipur and the color and the chaos and the
we can cut it.
Just
it's okay. You want to take a break?
So I want to give an example about these smart city projects. You know, there are schemes of signage. Okay, so we went to Dehradun and all the signage was red. Like every shop had the same signage. And I think that was somebody's initiative to say signage regulate होना चाहिए, heritage में ऐसे होना चाहिए. But actually, you have taken away the very character of that place. So I give this example to my students also that when they were filming this Zero Dark 30 and they wanted to create Lahore, they went to a sector in Chandigarh and they put all of this signage in Urdu and created Lahore in Chandigarh, right? So which means that signage is so important to a character. तो अगर आप एक जैसी सारी signage लगा दोगे जैसे उन्होंने जयपुर में किया है, देहरादून में, हर जगह स्मार्ट सिटी में कर दिया है, you have taken away what makes the place so special.
Exactly.
So it's not about making it boring, it's not about making it in the same line, it's about letting everyone have their individuality. Everyone, every street, every mohalla. When you go, you recognize a particular, like Connaught Place की building same है, but you know अगर आप बचपन से गए हो कि B block में बाटा है and you know B block because of the Bata signage.
Yes.
You don't care whether the columns are Tuscan or not.
Yeah.
And अब तो ढूंढना ही नहीं है क्योंकि सारी साइनेज एक जैसी होगी, आपको नहीं मिलता है.
नहीं मिलता है.
So the point is that we also have to be very critical. What works in Oxford Street doesn't necessarily need to work in India. At the same time, we need to be critical. कुछ चीजें उनकी बहुत अच्छी है and definitely they should be incorporated. But we also have to see कि हमारा context क्या है. For example, a no development policy doesn't work in India. क्योंकि we are a developing economy.
Exactly.
तो no development zone बना के आपने कुछ नहीं. You have
100-200 साल बाद चलेगा, अभी नहीं चलेगा.
नहीं, अभी भी हमारे पास पॉलिसी है. आप पॉलिसी की बात करें. There is a policy around the monument, 100 meters. No,
you cannot do
no
anything.
Development. 200 meters from that, you can do regulated development. How does it help us? So the point is, number one, don't copy policies. Policies need to be made bottoms up, and policies need to be made where communities are.
But this is a big challenge in Delhi as well. Regularized colonies and them falling under ASI.
Yes.
When the plans were sanctioned, काफी कुछ हो रहा है, and they're like middle of the construction they'll stop the work.
Yeah.
And then people are like, कहाँ जाए हम घर तोड़ के बना रहे थे अब कहाँ जाए?
The thing is, like we're saying, of course there are monuments, right? But like, or the heritage exists on every kilometer in Delhi, and it's an old city. And there's so many cities within Delhi, right?
Sultanate.
That's basically the point of it. I mean, you have to like Abad, you have other things,
Exactly.
whatever, right? You have so many, you have Mehrauli, you have so many other cities of Delhi. The point is not that. The point is that if you have policy or if you have bylaws and guidelines that help people deal with heritage intelligently, that give people the liberties, because right now, no, everything is up for interpretation. क्योंकि कुछ exist नहीं करता. एक policy है monuments की, like as we are stating, 100 meter ये करो वो करो. But there is more to heritage than monuments. Yeah. And even in monuments, there's more to do than to just keep it on a chenille ka cushion in a museum kind of setup. Like you were saying, Mehrauli, there is just one grill around it.
पूरा बंद कर.
So वो वैसे पड़ा हुआ. You know, a building that lives, a building that is in continued use, lives longer.
मैं आपको एक example देता हूँ Mehrauli का. मैंने बताया आपको. So there's this whole boundary of this masjid which is there, right? उसको काला महल बोलते हैं लोग. लोकल एरिया में उस बाउंड्री पत्थर की बनी हुई बाउंड्री है, स्टोन्स पुट टुगेदर. वी ट्राई टू कॉपी दैट बाउंड्री एल्सवेयर बिकॉज हम उसके आर्टिजन्स ढूंढ रहे हैं कि दिल्ली स्टोन लेके और ये स्टोन लेके वो इस तरीके की बाउंड्री बना दें 4 लोग, कितनी सुंदर लगती है वो बाउंड्री, राइट? बट जो वो बाउंड्री इट्सेल्फ इट्स ब्रोकन, वो टूटी हुई है, उसको कोई नहीं मेंटेन कर रहा है. देयर इज़ नो पॉलिसी इन प्लेस, देयर इज़ नो पीपल इन प्लेस, देयर इज़ नो कमिटी इन प्लेस. इवन इफ देयर इज, दे नॉट डूइंग देयर जॉब. और उसके बिल्कुल बाउंड्री के तुरंत बाहर कूड़ा पड़ा हुआ है, दुनिया भर का. लाइक स्ट्रे डॉग्स आर देयर, व्हाट नॉट, वही स्लम बच्चे वहाँ बेचारे सब खेल रहे हैं, सब गंदगी फैली हुई है, मच्छर उड़ रहे हैं. इट्स नॉट टेकन केयर ऑफ. और उसी से जस्ट 30 मीटर दूर जाएंगे तो वहाँ मस्जिद बना हुआ है, बहुत सुंदर, साफ़ सुथरा है, वहाँ तक बाउंड्री तक सब साफ़ है, और उसके बाद का किसी ने ध्यान नहीं रखा हुआ. दैट बाउंड्री विच यू आर ट्राइंग टू इमिटेट इन द अदर पार्क्स एंड वॉट नॉट, विद इन मेहरौली दैट बाउंड्री इटसेल्फ इज़ ब्रोकन. दैट इज़ वॉट आई हैव सीन एज वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट डिवाइड्स. और उसके आगे बस उसको प्रिजर्व तो करते नहीं है ताकि लोग उसको टच ना करें, एक लोहे का जाल लगा देते हैं, जस्ट बार पीपल फ्रॉम एक्सपीरियंसिंग इट. Because again, people are people. They will go on and write names and whatnot over there. वो भी हो रहा है. And there is a Bhul Bhulaiya in Delhi. I remember growing up, we used to go there. It was a clean place. People used to go there. They used to have a good evening, good time. And वो एक कुल्फ़ी खाते थे वहाँ सुबह बचपन में. शाम को जाते थे घर वालों के साथ, क्योंकि छुट्टी के बाद यही होता था 5 बजे बाद, और कुछ नहीं होता था मेहरौली में. It was such a nice place. आप पैर नहीं रख सकते वहाँ. And that's still monumental in the way I'm telling you. But उसके अगल बगल के घर उसी डिज़ाइन के अकॉर्डिंग थे. सब फ्लैट्स बन चुके हैं 4-4 मंजिल के. एंड पीपल डोंट रिकग्नाइज अदर पीपल बिकॉज देव सोल्ड इट द प्रॉपर्टीज एंड मूव टू वैशाली, गाजियाबाद, वट एवर. द प्रिजर्वेशन इज नॉट जस्ट विद इन द स्पेसेस, बट द पीपल आर नॉट द सेम एनी मोर. सो यू फाइंड लाइक इट्स नॉट द सेम प्लेस, सो आई डोंट बिलोंग हेयर एनी मोर. एंड यू इवेंचुअली वॉन्ट टू मूव फ्रॉम देयर एज वेल एंड मे बी फाइंड अ न्यू प्लेस. सो जो रेफ्यूज था आपका, अब आप नया ढूंढने में निकले हो. सो कल्चरली आप पूरी तरह मूव हो चुके हैं. देयर इज दैट शॉक विद इन योर माइंड सेट सेइंग ओके, आई डोंट बिलोंग हियर, दिस इज नॉट द सेम प्लेस. एंड आई थिंक समडे लेटर ऑन, फ्यू ईयर्स डाउन द ईयर्स, वील बी लाइक रिग्रेटिंग इट. ओके, करा क्या हमने? एंड देन वील बी एक्चुअली गोइंग ऑफ टू दीज फ्यू सेक्लूडेड मॉन्यूमेंट्स जस्ट टू रीलिव दैट मेमोरी और जस्ट टू रीविजिट दैट फील ऑफ दैट प्लेस. हमारे रेगुलर एरियाज में जो अवेलेबल अबंडेंस में था, और वो सब गायब हो जाएगा धीरे धीरे, सब चेंज हो जाएगा. बट सैडली वी आर अ कंट्री विच इवोक्स इमोशन मेनली बिकॉज ऑफ रिलीजन रादर देन कल्चर. कल्चर वर्ड अभी समझने में टाइम है, शायद हमें उस तरीके की पढ़ाई अभी हमने नहीं की है, बट आई होप इट कम्स अराउंड होपफुली सूनर देन लेटर. टेल मी अबाउट द रेस्टोरेशन टूल बॉक्स. व्हाट हैव यू गाइज बिल्ट? हाउ इज इट हेल्पिंग पीपल? व्हाट्स योर विजन विद इट?
So our idea was that a stitch in time saves 9.
Yeah.
Most often, regular people, and we're talking about everyday heritage. We're not talking about monuments. There are experts to look after monuments. Right?
Yeah.
We're talking about your nanny's home. We're talking about the building down the street. We're talking about buildings that belong to all of us, like your schools, colleges, courts, etc., etc. Whether either they belong to the government or they belong to some trust or something. We are talking about those buildings that we call everyday heritage, that heritage that belongs to everyone. So very often, very few times is an architect actually involved in the restoration, repair, renovation or demolition of these buildings. Mostly decisions are taken within families, within institutions कि ये खराब हो रहा है, इसकी छत गिर रही है, इसकी balcony झूल गई है, blah blah blah. So our idea was to create a tool that when that first balcony jhulos and you call the contractor, you should be able to do the right thing. कि उसको prop up करके you are able to save it, because the contractor will come, he'll say ये तो गिर गया, demolish करो. So our idea was, if owners and occupiers have that tool, that when they are making the decision, should they demolish or should they repair or restore or refurbish, or they have the resources to make the right choice. And right is not right for just their economic benefit, but right for the building, right for the city, right for the community. Like those people who around Bhul Bhulaiya who demolished their houses, if they had this choice, would they have gone? Because nobody likes uprooting. And heritage is not just about buildings, it's about the people, and it's about the people that relate to that heritage. The people who have come around Bhul Bhulaiya don't have that connection, like you're saying, with the monument anymore that the earlier generation did. And based on our research and based on our experience over the last 20 years, we found that we are in a lucky place in India where you can still find people to repair. Like you can go down the street and you can find a carpenter, you can find a mason, you go a little bit further, you'll find the patharwala, you'll find the, like you wanted to do terrazzo, you could have found a terrazzo guy. So our idea was also looking at the architectural curriculum. A lot of these things are not taught in the syllabus anymore because nobody is doing them. So our idea was to empower young people, to teach them these lost crafts and to teach them how to do it, and to also at the same time give owners the opportunity that should they want to revive it, should they want to remake it, should they want to repair it, they should have an easy resource to do it. So we started through our Jugadopolis internship program, particularly during the COVID lockdowns. We did multiple batches of interns who worked with us, who we mentored to create these manuals. So we have about 15 manuals on different materials like terrazzo, wood, cement, ceramic tiles, timber, that were made by the students who we mentored. Ki, what is this? What is wrong with it and how do you repair it in a very pictorial and graphic fashion, which we have put up on the website. So anyone who has a smartphone, whether can access it, and even if they don't understand English, they can pictorially see and know how to do it. So we wanted, our target audience was, let's say, somebody in the middle of a second or a third tier city in India who has an old building that they are living in, to be able to fix it. So for us, restoration was not about taking it, when we use the word restoration, it wasn't about taking it back to a certain period in time, but it was to repair, to fix, to rebuild, to revitalize using traditional methodologies. Then the project sort of became like a open source platform where people could come together, you could find experts. So if you're sitting in, let's say, Jumri Talaya and you wanted to find an expert, through the digital technologies, you can find an expert in, say, France who can help you with your thing. So the potential of the digital technology is used because then a local problem becomes with a global solution. So if you put up on the forum that I have this property and I have this problem, can anyone help me? If someone is out there on that platform, you can connect with them and take a solution. Similarly, so that was the whole idea of the digital platform. And when we launched it, we thought we had done something really, avant-garde, and, it was going to change the face of restoration in this country, etc., etc. But then we also, through the Restoration Toolbox project, realized that it was very niche because of the digital parity that we have. Like, people are not so, it works in Europe because it's built on a European model. It works in Europe because everybody is digital savvy. They are used to doing things collaboratively online. We are not. So we realized that while we had the platform, we had the tech, we had everything working, but nobody was really coming forward and using it. And so we had to start something on the side, which is called the Restoration Clinic.
Also, लोगों को बातें ना beyond the point नहीं करनी. They just want to talk. And because of, unfortunately, how social media is working nowadays. And there was a time when earlier Twitter, now X, used to be a platform of free conversation. It's no longer that. Everything is politics. There's politics and whatever. It's not fun anymore. It's like I want to be as politically correct as possible.
There's censorship and whatnot.
So
they remove your posts and everything.
They do whatever else. So even though this was a platform, in a manner of speaking, a social media platform only, but related to restoration, beyond the point, people didn't want to just have conversations. So then we started doing outreach. So we went and we met people around the country. We went to Surat, we went to Mumbai,
we met all kinds of people who are related to this field. So we had workshops with, of course, students are our first target audience, but also peers, also people who work in the industry who are related to conservation, whether they are amenity groups, whether they are NGOs, whether they are philanthropists, whether whoever's interested in heritage, and also to municipal architects and municipal engineers who sanction these plans.
And there were all these gaps, Har ek conversation we were making this list and there was a wish list because said, we know so much. So, here there is a trained professional who has all the capability to do whatever, but they also say ki, I want to, I can, I am capable, I has money also, but this is missing, this is missing, this. So we started collecting all of this and putting it together. So this was coming to what it is that, we are lacking when it came towards restoration. And we were struggling with the aspect that digital platform we have these tools which will help the normal, common man do whatever else. What do we do? So sorry to interrupt her a little earlier. This is because this background is necessary. Where you have someone who's dealt with municipal corporations. You have someone who's there. All those people are there. Yeah. And then we came up with the idea of the restoration clinic, which was kind of a lab. It was like a simulation lab. We could test our theories in real time, and we were very lucky. We got an enthusiastic individual who wanted to do it. So where Aishwarya said earlier, sometimes all you need is moral support. And that's what we do through the clinic. I'll let her tell you the rest of what the clinic does.
The point was to show that if one can, many can, right? And our first project was a building in Mussoorie, which is a bungalow on the Mall Road, which had been dilapidated for many years. And through this clinic, through our initiative at Jugadopolis, we collaborated with the owner and used it as a training lab for students of architecture to learn timber, to learn lime, to learn how to restore, while giving advice and mentorship to the owner to restore his building on his own. The building is now complete, mostly complete, but it's ready, it's been done. And I think for me, that is the restoration toolbox. It has empowered one person who was at that point a dilemma: should I demolish or should I rebuild? To demolish and rebuild or to restore. And it's been 2.5 years and his building is now standing restored. And I think that's the power of the restoration toolbox. If one person can do it, it will work for every single person.
So all a normal individual, but I mean normal is not someone who's like that much of a heritage enthusiast or someone who's knowledgeable or not. I mean, we were lucky because the individual we're talking about, he is a heritage enthusiast and he's really, really passionate about, this was a passion project for him. He didn't need to do it. He has a house to live in. This was when the family could have sold it. It's right on the Mall Road. There was so much of, materialistic gain out of just getting rid of the thing. But he wanted to get into it. And then we had the tools. So even when we were developing the manuals, we sat down and we put down these basic things that any house, any old house or any old structure around the country would have. Around the country. There would be cast iron, there would be lime, there would be wood, there would be timber, there would be carved. This is normal. Ceramic tiles, terrazzo floor, which is what any old everyday heritage building would have, right?
We were really looking at interiors of India as our target audiences, because in metropolitan cities you still have access to architects and experts and all of that. But I think the cake really came in when we had an opportunity to present this project in Pakistan through an online forum. And they connected to it. And they said, our buildings are exactly like this. And it's a South Asian thing. It's like buildings in Bangladesh, buildings in Sri Lanka, buildings in Pakistan are similar. And because our manuals are on, construction material basis, it has a wider impact. It goes beyond Indian shores to South Asia, to Southeast Asia also. Buildings in Singapore and Malaysia also use, these technologies, and therefore there is a global impact.
Plans can change, building can change, plaster is plaster, brick is brick, wood is wood, it's like that. It was just basically that. So even in Mussoorie, that's what happened. Unko karna tha. It was a 130-year-old house. He had lime, he needed lime, we had lime. He wanted to do cement tiles.
He wanted to do that red cement flooring or whatever. So you asked me, what is the restoration toolbox? The restoration toolbox is a starting point to fuel your imagination to do whatever you want to do with your heritage, the way you want to do it. It just gives you the validation, it gives you the right direction, it gives you the right access to the right advice as and when you need it. And that is our contribution to saving our cities. And cities in our neighborhood and cities in other countries around us.
So this is the most, I would say this is only the most controversial statement I would be probably making today, but I will.
Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. So I'm going to take a deep breath and say it. All we want people to realize is you do not need the experts if you truly believe in what you want to do. You are empowered enough. You have tools which will teach you what is right and wrong. You have means and methodology. The only thing lacking in our dear country is that we don't have policies which really support you, or we do not have guidelines that help you do this. But we are working towards it. We are advocating in that direction. We are working towards it. Not just us. It's a collective. We are nothing without each other. So it's a team of people that are pushing this ahead. We are working towards it. But that being said, it is everybody's heritage.
Yeah.
It doesn't belong to a certain niche or a certain circle or a close group or a clique or whatever. It's everybody's heritage, and you're empowered enough. You can do it. You have to just believe that you want to do it. And wherever you're lacking, that's the only point you need an expert, not to guide you instead, but just to kind of give you moral support.
Last 3 questions, but one tough one. Okay. What 3 additions or changes to the current policy would you have had or would you want to have? 3, not more.
I think the methodology of how we make the policies and
Okay.
have more voices in making policies. More voices meaning voices from the ground. From the ground meaning custodians of those heritage, because most often than not we found that custodians are pushing against policies. So just one fine day you wake up and you realize your building is listed as heritage. They have no knowledge, they have no idea why, and they don't know what to do with it.
What is the, how do they judge this? What's the, there must be a formula to it, right?
See, there are different formulas that different organizations use, but it's not been a transparent process so far. So there are contestations. So people come up with, when they have these stakeholder meetings, people come up and say, कि मेरे पड़ोसी का नहीं किया, मेरा क्यों किया? So I think transparency in building these policies and having a consensus in what is heritage and what is really required to be preserved and how.
Yeah.
Second thing is capacity building of public institutions, because the people who are dealing with this heritage are often lost. They are not trained in heritage in the way we would like them to be. So what happens is that they do their best, but everybody just blames them.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit more capacity building of our public institutions would really go a long way in making...
Yes, like everybody doesn't need to be a conservation architect.
Yeah.
But at least everybody needs to do like a bridge course to understand how to work with heritage.
Yeah.
So
especially with
at least
people
that
who
information.
want to do it, they actually don't know.
When you're working with the CPWD or anybody or even the municipal corporations, you have municipal engineers, right? They're civil engineers working in the estate department or in projects. That's who they are. They're architects also, yes, done.
Yeah.
But they're architects. We are not saying everybody should be a conservation architect, but there has to be some kind of
sensitivity towards
those
that.
guidelines or that that capacity building. Do a
And
few
then
things.
also, I think the policies, the third point, needs to address the issue holistically. It can't be a diktat. कि आज से आप heritage हो बस. If you want me to preserve my building, you need to also help me preserve my building. So when we look at policies abroad, what we see is कि इन्होंने ना heritage listing बनाई है, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 हम भी बना रहे थे. But what you also need to see is उन्होंने और भी policies बनाई हैं that gives you a grant. So if you are living in a conservation area in London and you want to repair your facade, the council will give you a grant to repair your windows, doors, this, that, and the other. They will also give you free advice in the form of a conservation officer who will come and help you design your building.
That support system is in place.
Yes, and also they have like in London they have a Localization Act 2011 which gives local communities the power to decide कि उनको अपने एरिया में क्या करना है. They make the projects, they make the budgets and then go to the council and say हमें ये करना है, and the council supports them. So if you don't have these acts but you just have the main acts, then how do they talk to each other? आपने act तो बना दिया, but what about the support system to
empower them to actually do that? You didn't say anything controversial. I'll say something controversial. आपने जो बोला वो तो फिर भी controversial नहीं था. It might be there for that architectural community. Maybe somebody has a stigma towards that idea. But living in South Delhi, 80% of the construction that happens in Delhi is unauthorized. 80% of the construction materials market is catering to unauthorized construction. 20% is the approved plans, the authorized construction or regularized colonies. The bill was put in somewhere in 2001 or somewhere to regularize such colonies for the master plan 2021, right? 21's gone, 24's here. Now 25 is in place and 2030.
41 का आ गया.
41 आ गया. और फिर 47 विकसित भारत की बात भी हो रही है. ये सब चीज़ हो रही है, लेकिन कॉलोनीज बनती जा रही हैं, बिल्डिंग्स खड़ी होती जा रही हैं, because now these colonies need water, they need बिजली, they need all those systems. Nothing is in place. तो सब जुगाड़ से हो रहा है. सब पानी की चोरी हो रही है, कुछ भी हो रहा है, right? But colonies are still being made. But there is still no platform, there is still no decision towards them. Rather than a penalizing action is now being decided कि ये सील कर देंगे, ये तोड़ देंगे, इसको डिमोलिश कर देंगे, इसको एक्वायर कर लेंगे. But over the last 20 years, उन्हीं authorities ने पैसे लिए हैं just to get it done.
Just to make it.
Right?
Why allow it in the first place when you're going to break it down? I mean,
आपने allow कर
you're
दिया.
destroying the environment more than anything else.
If the policy was made earlier enough, तो आपके नक्शे पास होते, आप कॉलोनीज को सीवर लाइंस डालते, आप पानी का प्रोविजन करते, एटलीस्ट कुछ चोरी नहीं होता. आप भरते नहीं कॉलोनीज को, जो आज हाल है. इलीगल फ्लोर्स आते हैं, 2-3 फ्लोर्स एक्स्ट्रा बने हुए हैं. सो बेसिकली यू आर हैम्परिंग एवरीथिंग अराउंड इन दैट एनवायरनमेंट. एंड रियल एस्टेट भाव तो रुक नहीं रहा है, तो लोग तो बढ़ाते ही जाएंगे, बनाते ही जाएंगे.
See, I will say this, and I think you might relate to it. You were talking about Paris earlier.
Yeah.
It's so expensive to live in Paris.
Of course.
One apartment in Paris, because yes, there's no vertical development, right? Like you were saying, एक building
Yeah.
बनाने दी, नहीं बनाने दी, policy डाल दी, नहीं कर सकते. There are rules, right? You
Yeah.
can't do it. So prices are increasing there also. All that is happening. But the biggest difference between Paris and India, or even a third tier, fourth tier country, city in our country, is the density. Do they not see the numbers? You're going to get policy and ideologies and everything else from Europe and apply it to India, where I think Delhi is bigger than some countries in Europe. Okay, the population of Delhi is more than some countries. So don't come and tell me how is it that you do urban planning, urban design, or urban policy in Europe, and you call these experts, or you have these big meetings in that beautiful building, Bharat Mandapam. You have these big meetings, we call experts, and everybody's showing examples, somebody showing York, somebody showing London, somebody showing something else, and saying, oh, look at this policy, look how they're... Very good, congratulations to them. They are dealing with 1/10 of the population.
Okay.
1/10, maybe lesser, much lesser. And it doesn't work. So you're talking about water running out. Of course it will happen. No? You're letting people develop. You're letting the builders make 72 floors. Why do you need in Merol here? You're just down the road. Abhi ye to Chhatarpur mein hi ban raha hai na? 102 floors, something it's called. 102.
I'm not saying what it is, but yeah, it is.
But whatever, something like that it is called. I mean, what I remember last, that right here. Right here, right? It's not very far from here. I'll tell you, this is about what year is it? 15 years ago.
Sorry. It's okay.
So this is about 15 years ago that they wanted to bring London to India, to Delhi. So we were doing the Kalandi Kunj project, right? The Delhi Eye. So I was the architect and designer for that Delhi Eye project. And we were working on it and all, and then we wanted permission, right? Because it was the tallest structure वहाँ पे. तो फ्लाइट पाथ ये बहुत सारे वो किया हमने मेजर किया कि फ्लाइट टॉलेस्ट बिल्डिंग को आपने किया तब वो बन रही थी तब इट वाज नॉट मेड येट बट द परमिशंस द वंस व्हिच आर जस्ट अक्रॉस बिहाइंड द मेट्रो स्टेशन दोस बिल्डिंग्स not naming projects but they were getting permissions this that etc and all whatever else so they said make it not make it firstly if you didn't believe that it could be done don't give me permission so they said okay नहीं आप बना लो चलो करो वो करना शुरू किया काम किया फिर अचानक से फिर ये वो आ गए ग्रीन ट्रिब्यूनल वाले लोग कि चिड़िया उड़ के जाती है और चिड़िया के पाथ में आ रहा है यहाँ पे तो बट हम भी डीट हमने कहा आप मेरे को फ्लाइट पाथ दिखाओ you're studying birds you'll be studying their flight path you show me if their flight path is here I said I can challenge you they will not fly here because migratory birds will not take this path because it is going into this thing and the air ka upar ka jo path hai I also presented all the studies that I had and we started fighting with each other so they got the permission they made it project got done crores got put in mine also, not mine, my clients and the ones across the road, all of them, all the developments which were just across the river at that point, across that Okhla barrage, this side, that side, all projects got done. Buildings were 85-90% made. This project was about to opening करने वाले हैं, film stars को बुलाएंगे, ये करेंगे, seal everything. Why? No, we have taken out a new ruling. That within so many meters or whatever else, 2 kilometer radius, 5 kilometer radius, you cannot make a building above this height. Wow. Then why give the permission? Why let crores of rupees of it's hard on money, everybody's. It's not that a builder doesn't work hard. Exactly. So it's like a builder mafia ka paisa. It's not that. Everybody works hard for every rupee they have. And people's dreams. Forget an amusement park. That amusement park eventually worked till it worked. उनकी 10 year की lease खत्म हो गया वो. Forget that. But people's homes. I know of people who have houses in those developer colonies which were made right there who are still waiting.
Wow.
They are still waiting for their houses. Why? Because you stopped it at that time. Then the builder ran out of money. Then whatever else happened. Why let them build it? Why let them bring it to a point that they can't complete it? So the problem is not that policy doesn't happen. As Aishwarya said, you need transparency and you need involvement. You can't just one day put a blanket. So it has nothing to do only with heritage. It is everything, whether it's environmental, whether it is whatever else, whether it is development policies, whether it is road की width कितनी होनी है आपके घर के बाहर, किसी से पूछो तो आप बात तो करो.
Yeah.
And without participation, you can't do that.
Exactly.
So it brings us again back to that. We start at the grassroots, speak to the community, involve the community, and then make a policy.
One last question. Your expectations from the society and the community? Have you become hopeless over the time? No, right?
No.
I think we've become impatient. I think we have lost curiosity and we want instant gratification. So I think when we are dealing with heritage and when we need to be patient to let good things happen. I think a lot of good doesn't get done because people run out of patience or they want कि मेरे को अभी चाहिए, अभी चाहिए, अभी चाहिए, अभी नहीं मिलता कुछ. And that is also a trend that we're seeing with the Gen Z, that there is hardly any input, but they want results. And then that mindset reflects in everything they do. Whether they are designing a building, whether they are cooking a meal, whether they are, going about their life.
Absolutely.
So this idea of instant gratification कि मैं अभी करूँगी, मुझे अभी मेरे को अभी famous बनना है. And मेरे को अभी famous बनना is costing the city.
Yeah, and because unfortunately that is the demand, then the supply becomes that, right? When patience is no longer being bought, when things that take time are no longer being accepted, then there is no other choice that professionals from our fraternity also need to give them these instant solutions. So now you are getting, well, you can do beautiful stonework and plaster work on your walls, but no, now you get PVC का panel direct, मतलब woodwork भी नहीं करना है उनको. Everything is like आज for 6 months and then boredom. 6 months के लिए मुझे मेरे घर के अंदर
wooden. आप तो फिर भी अच्छी दीवार की बात करोगे. I'm talking about a wall barred with seepage. They'll be like cover it up with PVC panel. छोड़ दे, करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Just get it done. And it's PVC, nothing will happen.
But then that
also बोर हो गए ना, हमें ऐसा करना ही चाहिए.
We are pushing towards circularity. We are trying to say let's save the environment, but people want to change every 1 year. They first will put that nakli PVC wood look, 100% wood look. It's not 100% wood, so obviously it's not good for the environment. Please let's get that across, right? So they want it for 6 months. Then 6 months they want to change it, say stone karo. And affordability, everybody has money now. Let's be honest, everybody can afford it.
We can afford
spending capabilities have really changed in this country. I'm happy for the economy and I'm happy for all the youngsters and everyone that's doing so well. The new generation is going to be much better off. But on what kind of a planet?
Yeah.
I think the point is that you asked us what we want from society. We want society to be more discerning. We want them to be mindful of every decision that they take and to be close to what values we've been brought up with, what we believe in, what is good for the environment, what is good for society. I mean, the amount of mental health issues and all of that we are all facing because we are closing off people, we don't have any social connection. The screen is a problem. I mean, now they're banning it in schools and stuff like that, but the point is that is reflecting in the way we live, the way we build, and the way we use our public spaces. कहाँ है public spaces?
I think some of it is lack of audacity of meaningful conversation and then finding those meaningful people who actually bring meaning to it, because there is no safe space in any case because we don't trust people. तो जब तक वो conversation नहीं होगी तो वो mental health का तो issue रहेगा. Second is, I think it sort of also wraps around very nicely because we all ask what's going to change in 10 years. We don't ask what's going to remain constant for 10. हमारा वो vision ही नहीं है because we believe in change and we say change is the only constant and we are chasing that change. So, facetiously,
We have
let's
to
say.
start looking at it as evolution and not change. And that's what people forget.
Yeah.
Don't forget where you come from. And that's why we keep pushing. Heritage is not just about the build. Heritage is about who we are. There's cultural heritage, right? And when we live in cities like, big cities like Delhi, Mumbai or anywhere else, today with the amount of migration and everything else, and
There's so
people
much
moving,
burden on the city.
so not just that, it's shared cultural heritage now. So it's not
That's
just
true.
my city, it's our city.
Our city.
That's why it's not just my heritage, mera ghar, meri marzi. It is hamara.
And Delhi has always been a melting pot.
Yeah.
And it's
Right?
that. So don't forget.
That's true.
Don't forget where you come from. Please be patient. Things take time.
Yeah.
Look, they used to tell us ना पेड़ भी लगाओ वो 10 साल में फल देता है आपको आज ही चाहिए तो then you drink jelly मतलब have that jelly का flower made with fake flavor whatever fruit look alike then you say people are making it fake. Of course it'll be fake. If you want the real thing, be patient.
And evolution is real. Change or overnight success is unnatural and unreal in any case.
There's no overnight success.
There is none.
There is always a story behind it. Like people
Yeah.
think that people made it big overnight, then nobody makes it overnight.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of hard work behind it.
Awesome. I think these sessions get enriched every time I meet people like you. It's fun to talk to, and it's actually like opens up some sort of a corner in my mind. So thank you for your time, guys. I hope you enjoyed talking to me because I'm definitely not from the architectural fraternity, but I hope I wasn't boring enough.
But that's what we say. We need people who are ready to like go across
we
that.
don't want to talk to the converted because they know more than us.
But that's all, you know.
If we
that's all
want
we need.
to be, and I think I'll close with this.
Yeah.
The point is to be relevant, and to be relevant, you have to speak to everybody in a language that they understand. What is the point of throwing jargon?
Yeah.
किसी को समझ ही नहीं आए तो
नहीं आएगा.
It's not about what we are saying, it's about what you are understanding. And if you could understand us and if you could relate to what we are saying, then I think that's like
the job is done.
Yeah. I think there's a beautiful story to be told here, and I wish you guys really big success with your ideas and the toolbox that you've created. This was Aishwarya and Hinna, and I am Rishabh Aggarwal. This is your favorite construction podcast, The Code. Write to me if you have any questions at India's #1 Construction Podcast at gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram and send us your queries and questions there. Thank you so much.